All right, welcome back, everyone. So go ahead, Nelson and NATO, you guys were both having stuff to say right between videos.
Well, I was just saying, though, I think a combination of what I've been saying, NATO's been saying, and Gavin's been saying would be interesting, where there still is that, of course, that archaeological doohickey stuff that I was talking about, where the possibility that magic can be eventually, possibly to some degree, unlocked, even for humans, I think would be interesting.
Given you should qualify that.
Huh? Given that they do enough of these digs and they find the MacGuffins that let them shoot sparks out of their hands, but it would also be interesting to have, like Gavin was saying, like a feral Ethiopian culture who
nice. I love that. Somebody write that down. Ethiopian. That's brilliant.
Culture.
Thanks, Nelson.
Thrown himself there. That's fantastic.
That's right. Smooth butter's not so smooth anymore.
I like the idea of magic being used for not interesting things, if you see what I mean. I like the idea of it as a background to the world that isn't necessarily part of what you actually do yourself, but the idea that there's people you can go to who can do things that you can't is an interesting one. It would make certain aspects, I'm sure, it makes certain problems of gameplay easier to solve, because you would have the option there to have the NPCs, and it is an easy thing to balance, because you can just make sure that of what the requirements are to be able to access this, and I think as a palette almost for a background for the game to play out against, the idea of a society that isn't focused on money and isn't focused on human way of doing things would be an interesting position to put humans in.
But though I think that it would be interesting for players to be able to wield magic, if as one of the later level things that you can, like, sort of like becoming a Jedi in Star Wars Galaxies originally, but not to the same. I mean, obviously, once you have this magic ability, you're not all of a sudden way overpowered. But it's something to. It's a goal. It's something to go for.
Well, it's something like in the 4th ed D&D, where you've got the 3 tiers. You've got 10 levels of your basic stuff, and then you can choose to take a specific career path that unlocks certain things, unlocks other things, and can make you powerful in a specific way. That might be a way to go, but then that brings back the whole issue of having to deal with the mechanics side of it. And I suppose fundamentally the question is, what percentage of this question is based on logistical concerns, and what percentage of this question is based on gameplay concerns? Because at the end of the day, if it's mostly logistical, then we need to ditch them as a playable race.
No, keep in mind, I'm not worried about that, because we've already said to everyone at the beginning that we're putting this together on our timeline. We still have a business to run, and we have other things that we have to do. So sometimes we have a lot of time to put a lot of videos out, and sometimes there's slower times while we're working on other products and all. So I don't want that to stand in our way at any point. Of course, I want to try to keep this going forward just as fast as we possibly can, because it's very exciting to me. So I don't want to even worry about that or consider that.
I was just thinking from the point of view of, like Zach was saying, the whole thing with, you've got to have separate animations, you've got to have separate models, you've got to have separate everything.
Sure.
It is quite I was going to say quantum leap. It's quite a chunk of extra stuff that needs to happen, and I assume that was at least part of.
No, actually, that wasn't part of our concerns. Our concerns were just defining, as we sat there describing this virtual world to one another, a world that was so heavily embedded in technology that suddenly we found it hard to be cool as an Elythian if they were all purists and did not get involved with any of our tech. Zach, what are your thoughts after Nelson and Chris and
Well,
Gavin.
the logistics side of it is an interesting consideration, however it falls. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a determining factor in the decision. It's just one of those things that came up after really pouring so much effort into humanity. I mean, I think you can come up with okay, well, the humans have this immersive internet. Well, the Elythians have ESP, and what I really would like to avoid is having stuff feel like a copycat cutout or a cop out, even. Where, you do feel like you've come up with all these things for the humans, and then it just feels like, oh, well, we also just kind of slapped some stuff together and labeled it magic and called it.
That's why instead of the balancing act, I was more interested in the possibility of, what if you had some Elythians that didn't care about being purists and actually had implants installed where they could learn a skill set to jack into our digital virtual realms on the world that we've created.
For that matter, the corollary of you, there's going to be somebody who's some Elythian who's willing to teach the mystic arts that he knows to humans for 3 cows and a bucket of giraffes.
And not just that. Remember, the stories were kidnapping, testing, and splicing in, and all that good stuff. So we're already working on figuring out how we can harness magic as well. So I
think that's the thing. If there is a currently technologically advanced, I need another word, magicalogically.
Actually, you're the one who almost threw something through my monitor because I used the word arcanical.
Mechanical.
Yeah.
The thing is, I hated myself for saying that, but. There needs to be a word. I shall have to go and find a word for it. But there needs to, if there is some sort of... See, I have no idea what I was going to say now.
No, magicalogically, there needs to be some sort of equivalent for everything.
It's some sort of...
But I think what Zach was saying is true, as far as it just starts to feel really shallow. And at that point, there really is no difference between the Elythians and the humans, besides what you call yourself.
Whoa. Not true. Not true. You'd still have certain traits that humans just couldn't necessarily master at all as being an Elythian, and vice versa with humans as well.
I mean, there are ways around it without it just feeling like a dead mirror of it. I mean, I think we were talking just the other day about magic, and then I was mentioning, there's cards, there's any number of cards that are, from a purely game mechanical point of view, the same card, because they have the same effect. It's another elven thing or whatever, or it's an ally that just gets +1/+1. But it doesn't matter what the artwork is on the card or what the flavor text is on the card. As far as the game is concerned, it's the same card.
It's also
usually there's a difference in colors. Like, for example, if you look at Honor of the Peer, enchantment +1/+1 to all of your white creatures. There's a difference between a white ally and a green ally.
Let's not get into magic, but anyway.
I was only using that as an example. You've got 2 different things that do the exact... I mean, you see this all the time. You see it in D&D, you see it in any game, because it's an easy way to balance things. You don't have to balance things. They're the same thing as far as the game is concerned. You just change what the player sees. You've got a different animation when the spell goes off. It still does 5 damage. It doesn't matter whether it's an ice spell or a fire spell. That is... And that's kind of how we're looking at the whole idea of the magic at the moment. You've used the same game mechanics but with a magical name and a technological name.
I mean, obviously, we'd want to give advantages to both sides over mechanics for things like combat and all, and crafting. But at the same time, and I know that at least 2 of you guys have played this. Well, 3, including Zach. It's one of the things I love about Eve, is when you go in, you want to pick your race to begin with. It's like, oh dear heavens, what do I want to be? And the nice thing is you can just read what they stand for and go with the one you like, because as far as what you can learn versus Angela, who happened to pick a completely different race than me, we can still hook up. We can still do things together. We both can still
learn the same things.
We can still learn the exact same things. Absolutely.
But it's funny, actually, because that brings up something that I actually do. One of the things that I dislike about Eve is that, okay, it opens it up at the start, but there's the differences are, and I suppose this is what you're saying about the whole magic thing. The differences are cosmetic to a large extent.
I don't think we would, if we stayed with both races being playable. I don't think we'd have to have a cosmetic only solution. I still think that the Elythians should. Well, that's what it sounded like. I think the Elythians should still have much better ability with magic and a lot of spells that humans just couldn't use. And at the same time, Elythian anatomy does not necessarily allow complex biotechnology graphs and all to be, added to their body. I mean, they can't.
They can't interface with it.
Yeah, exactly. They can't interface with it. Thank you. So, I mean, I still think we can come up with balancing things, but at the same time, we build a badass refrigerator for the humans. I don't have a problem with the Elythians being able to use that refrigerator to keep their milk cold.
But do they drink milk?
Yes, it's a.
We introduced them to it.
It's an intoxicant for them.
Yeah,
because that's never been done before.
Exactly. But they like it soured only. But anyways, that
I
was.
I kind of feel as though everyone's changed everyone else's mind, and we've just come out. You know what I mean? It's like that feeling that we've all just swapped places now.
Yeah. Well, no, I still stand by my original thought, which was heavier integration than what I was originally anticipating when we started putting the stories and all together. It just makes it a little bit easier because there's a lot of systems that we're going to set up as humans that the Elythians are going to be very fascinated in and are going to be interested in using. And I just try to picture it as the real world, the real universe. I mean, if we did go to some other planet and then we'd been there for 150 or so years and we did develop all of this awesome technology that we're using, I mean, obviously the alien race there is going to be curious.
But do those people necessarily have to be playable? And do those people, I mean, what about from the same perspective that Nada was talking about alien rights?
This is their planet, man, and I was picturing them to be equally as powerful as us. So I just feel funny about that we've gone to their planet and now we're going to hand them human rights.
But it's as an extension of what Gavin was saying, where they have lost touch with their society. They're in their dark ages. They're still dying from sickness. They're still impoverished. They're still.
Well, I'm still remembering the Nexians and that whole storyline that Zach had come up with, because that kind of interferes with all of that.
No, that still could have happened.
Yeah, I mean, all of this could have happened. As opposed
that could have been quite easily the cause of that could be their equivalent to the meteorite that wiped out the dinosaurs. That can still stand. We could be talking about everything that's been talked about the Elythians could be still have happened to this society that is now.
And the cool thing is all that lore would be not only still part of the game, but something people actually go out of their way to obtain.
Yeah. It would actually be beneficial from that respect. It's the getting people to read the flavor text problem, isn't it? It's that classic clicking on the question mark. Mm-hmm. You don't read what the quest is unless you want to make sure you're not going to get stuck with somebody following you for a while. Right. You click on the exclamation mark and then you click accept. You need to find a way to, or you don't need to. You don't have to. I mean, it's worked perfectly well for years, but I find it depressing in games when you really have to search out the plot with no real benefit to you for doing so, because it separates it again. It pulls you away from.
But think about
what you're doing in the game.
This perspective is you're walking out of you're walking around town. You see all these aliens, and they're all being Half-Life 2 Combine style. They're all being trodden on, I guess. And then you see those people, and then you get a quest. You're on your quest to discover magic. So you're going over these ruins and stuff, and you stumble across these accounts of what happened to Elythians and their story. Because you're going to be seeing these Elythians all the time. You're going to be interacting with them all the time. I think there'll be a bigger there'll be a bigger incentive for people to actually go out and read that lore. In this particular instance, I don't know. It's just, that's my weird, twisted thoughts.
And they have some merit, obviously.
Well, some you haven't really commented directly on what I've been saying about as far as that. What do you think?
Well,
Zach?
you kind of went through without taking much of a breath. I don't know, and I think really we're down to the point of just preference. I think we're getting to a point where...
Where's the CEO card?
No, I'm not pulling it out. If everybody would prefer the Elythians to just be NPCs, and that's the general consensus. I just felt that people interested in playing the game would like the choice of being able to play humans or Elythians, and there definitely be mechanical benefits one way over the other, or for both sides. But
my preference, if I absolutely had to state a preference, I'd like to have them as a playable race. But if not, I definitely like the idea of them, or even if so, I like the idea of there being past societies. I think that has got a lot of strength, as Nelson's pointed out, in terms of what it enables the plot writers and the quest writers, and it generally gives you some MacGuffins at the end of the day that would be useful.
So by them being just what's left of their society makes it more rich in the possibility for story, as opposed to them having a very complex modern society on their own world.
But there
the separation between what is there now, whether it is a peasant society, whether it is a technologically advanced society. I like the idea that there was, at some time in the past, like the Incas or the Aztecs, like I said, an advanced society that we actually that currently not much is known about.
Yeah, I
think
that
the dungeons, and it gives you the things to explore, and it gives you the option for sequels, if you like, because you can suddenly turn around. It's Megatron being buried in ice at the end of or buried in the Marianas Trench at the end of Transformers. You know he's going to get dug up again. If there's a society that used to be there that had, any number of secrets that are no longer known or known about, they become the people of legend. The Elythian gods, if you will. That they're talked about as something that it's that idea of the old guy talking about how times were in the past, and the oral tradition that used to exist, still does in parts of the world, is the font of myths and legends for and any self-aware animal is going to try and put a shape on what it sees around it. And if they discover these, picture something like the massive Incan temples, Aztec, I don't know which is which, I can never remember. But they must have, think how they look to us. Just imagine how they would look to someone who has no idea of how they could possibly have been built.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more, in response to your question, Jason, I think there's a lot more room to actually develop a really advanced civilization, even more advanced than what we could ever hope to accomplish if they had existed right now and we had to model it all out. But just the vast amount of lore and different conclusions that people could draw based off looking at those ruins, the amount of implication, the amount of mystery, I think would be a lot more alluring than if it just all existed as it always has been right in front of us.
The problem is, where's your game?
Where's the what?
Where is the game?
Oh, there'll be monsters in the dungeons, of course. There'll be monsters.
What are they? Where are they from? What drive do they have? What is the purpose? Why would you risk it? There's no...
To go down to get magic. That's the ultimate goal. You're learning about Elythia because you want to acquire magic.
I don't care about magic. I just want to pick up a big gun and go shoot some Elythians. Why can't I?
Well, then just go do that. But that's like saying, I don't want to level up. I just want to sit around and kill these.
Well, why wouldn't shooting Elythians give you XP?
It might give you XP, but it shouldn't unlock something like magic. Magic should, if that
no,
is.
but I don't care about magic.
then don't get it.
If I want, yeah.
But
So
just don't get it. You don't have to hack. You don't
my
have
point.
to
No. My point is,
sculpt terrain. You could just you could pay $35 a month.
Nelson,
Or subscription is
Nelson.
to sit
I think you broke him.
I
in
think
a
so.
little corner of grass. And just
Nelson.
stand there and look at
You
this.
broke him, definitely.
right, okay, never mind then.
NATO.
No, go ahead, NATO.
Yeah, the point is that we need some sort of if the Elythians are going to be in the game, which I think they probably should be, we need them to be a strong force of some kind. Whether they need to have a political agenda as an entity. Whether or not they can express that political agenda or not is another matter. The fact that you can go down into dungeons and find some Elythian artifacts or whatever, that is cool. That should, yeah, I'm fine with that. But they need to have a purpose to be in the game.
They're remnants of their past glory that we use and we.
No, the Elythians as a whole.
Yeah,
We need to work out why the Elythians are there, and if they are an aid to give the player more power, then we have to address whether that's a good thing. Because I don't see why you should get. I don't see why you should have. Basically, why magic? What's the purpose of it if it's just more power? Flavor.
I think what you're talking about extends much further than this discussion. You're talking about what the point of the entire game is. What I'm discussing about is, as far as the drive to get magic, that's just a small part that I think would open up many hours of gameplay, many hours of exploration, many hours of reading, many hours of combat and growth as a character. I think that just that one goal could be just a small part of the game, just a concrete example of one of the things you might want to do in this game.
Well, and that's a key point as well, because I'm, with the best will in the world, no matter how this game turns out, I'm not going to be spending 8 hours in a row doing computer hacking in the game. That doesn't mean I don't think it should be a part of the game, but it's not the part that I'm most interested in. Do you see?
No,
I don't know what point you're trying to make.
The point I'm trying to make, we're arguing semantics, and we should be talking about whether or not we're actually putting Elythians in the game, and if so, why? And if so, not why. If we are putting them in, are they playable? And if so, why? What do we gain by having them in as an NPC, and what do we gain by having them in as a playable race? That's the question we have to answer.
Yep, I agree.
Well, the what you would gain as an NPC is if there is a conflict between the Elythians and the humans, that the individual players can decide to what extent they play a role in. That could be a major driving force in the game. That's
character development. That's plot development. That's good. That's what we want.
But it's also gameplay. It extends to gameplay because
exactly. It's synonymous.
Okay, so that's a reason why they might exist as NPCs. Also, why they might exist as dead NPCs or remnants of.
I don't think that's viable. I don't think there's enough drive for the player. If we're going to have them in, they need to be a major thing, because the amount of work we're going to have to go to create.
Yeah. I'm not saying. I've been just talking because I thought you had already covered. Between you and Gavin, you've kind of already covered the idea of there being a nomadic, not all that powerful race of aliens that the humans have tried to take advantage of, and now there's slowly an alien rights movement that's sort of one of the primary aspects of this game, or the primary conflict of the game.
Well, not necessarily. That was a kind of a side idea, but the fact that the Elythians exist, and they are politically quite powerful. They might not be able to match up to the amount of firepower the humans can pump out through magic, but they exist and they're important.
Or maybe they can pump out the same kind of power with magic.
Yeah, possibly. I think the key question is, are they playable? Because by the sound of it, we do want to keep them in.
I think after hearing all of this talk, we might as well make them playable. I mean, not to just start throwing out random decisions on the matter, but just after hearing all of the discussion and how much care and concern is for them. Really, because one of the things that I wanted to pull out of these couple of videos where we discussed this was just to see how at least this group of people that we're talking to right now, and certainly, you know, other folks as well, I wanted to gauge the overall reaction to just throwing the idea out there. If we started these videos off by saying, hey, what if the Elythians didn't exist? And everybody's like, oh, okay, well, what about the humans? What are we going to do with them? I think they might be gone by now. But hearing all of the different ways in which people would like to try to keep them incorporated, I think we'll just go ahead and leave them in the game. Now, in terms of what Nelson's talking about with things that could be uncovered, even while we were sitting here, I came up with 3 or 4 different ways that exact same style of plot could be applied. But that's really a topic for another day.
Okay, sounds good. So, all right, we'll just stay on target with that. But I did think that this was important that we at least discussed our concerns.
I mean, did you have more other concerns? Specific, more?
Well, that was the biggest concern.
Was that the big one?
But that was pretty much the big one. I still think that we should, and Zach and I can just discuss this and see if we can come up with some storyline stuff. I still think that it would be nice in their training to be able to get in touch with, you know, certain people from the human side and get human training so that you could use, you know, some of our systems, not necessarily all of them, but a lot of the cool stuff that we're talking about that we'll be getting to later, it would be nice to see, you know, both humans and Elythians being able to utilize this type of stuff. But at the same time, you know, there needs to be balance in place. So if an Elythian starts spending more time making themselves human-like, what are they losing? How are they hurting themselves as far as the purists go? And the same thing applies for humans who might want to start investigating arcanicide drugs and experimentation with the ability to harness magic.
Sure.
How are they harming themselves? You know, if they have any sort of augmentations to their body, would that you know, be a detrimental effect to that?
I do like that, the idea that there's something fundamentally that technology and arcanicide don't go together very well.
Yeah, so do I.
I mean, it's almost a de facto principle in terms of balance. Mm-hmm. Because if you start, you know, otherwise you're going to end up with everyone knowing everything.
Yeah, exactly,
Sure.
Exactly. But there's got to be balance, and you've got to force a player into making decisions, and sometimes hard decisions, as far as how they're going to take their training.
Can't all be a cakewalk.
Okay, good. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this discussion up, and we'll be revisiting it as we in the future when we start discussing storylines. Like I said, Zach and I can do that off camera, as far as how we want to develop the world in such a way that we do more or less have these smaller factions and how everybody's all kind of divided up. I definitely like the idea of being able to come into as a new player. I sit down, I select human because, hey, I'm a human. I want to be a human. Or Elythian because, you know, I'm fascinated with magic, but I know that no matter which one I select, I'm rather going to be more technology-based or I'm going to be more magic-based, but you know, a lot of the cool things that are floating around in the game aren't going to be something that's going to be removed from my abilities to play with. And then also being able to, I don't want to have to stress, you know, oh, am I, you know, the humans are considered the bad guys or the good guys, so am I going to be a good guy or a bad guy? It's completely irrelevant. I love the idea of it's what you do, the kinds of quests you take, the people that you hang out with, that you associate with, that more or less defines, you know, are you going to be a criminal type person? Are you going to be, you know, against the humans being there, period? Are you going to be a sympathizer? Or are you going to be a human that... You see what I'm getting at, though. Right. I think there's a lot to explore and to do there, and I think it will, again, simplify a lot of the stuff we're doing, and it just makes it nice for a new user to be able to sit down, and just the bottom line is you want to be a human or a Elythian. Mm-hmm. Do you like magic more than technology, but you're not screwing yourself? You know, you still get to make your decisions in the world.
And to go to the auction house whenever you want.
Damn straight. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll just conclude this topic for now, and we'll stay on target as them being playable and perhaps more integrated as we move forward. So thank you guys very much, and that will wrap up this video.